In the soft cradle of the Austrian Empire, in a small village called Smiljan, a child was born beneath the muted rhythm of a summer storm. It was the night of July 10th, 1856. The wind rolled across the hills, brushing against tall grasses and whispering through the leaves of ancient trees. Lightning painted the sky in brief silver flashes, illuminating the modest wooden home where Nikola Tesla first opened his eyes to the world. The villagers would later say he was a child of the storm, as in perhaps there was something prophetic in that thought, that the very force of nature which roared above him would one day echo in his inventions in his lifelong dance with light and energy. Inside that quiet home, Nikola's mother, Juka Mandic, lay resting, her dark hair damp with rain and effort. She was known in the village for her gentle intelligence, a woman who never studied formally, yet held a mind full of memory and invention. She could weave intricate patterns, craft tools for daily use, and remember entire passages from books she never owned. To her, creativity was not a matter of education but of rhythm, a natural flow of thought shaped by necessity and curiosity. His father, Milutin Tesla, was a Serbian Orthodox priest, a man of conviction, eloquence, and philosophy. His sermons carried both spiritual weight and poetic beauty. He believed in the order of things, faith, intellect, and the pursuit of moral clarity. He had wanted his son to follow the same path, a life of reflection and service through words. Yet within that home, two different kinds of wisdom met: his father's world of discipline and words, and his mother's world of silent invention. Between them, Nikola found both order and imagination, logic and wonder. As a child, Nikola would often sit quietly by the window, watching the way the sunlight struck the fields. He found comfort in observing the way light shifted with the hour, the way water turned silver at dusk, or how a flame danced with invisible air. Even in his earliest memories, there was a fascination with patterns. He would count the steps between rooms, measure the angle of sunlight, and trace the rhythm of raindrops on glass. It was as though the world spoke to him in quiet numbers and luminous shapes. The Tesla household was modest, but filled with thought. Books lined the shelves. Not many, but enough to kindle a mind. Milutin read from Homer and the Bible, from works of philosophy and poetry. At the same time, Juka's hands worked ceaselessly, mending, creating, shaping the world around her with quiet precision. In that balance, Nikola learned something unspoken: that creation could arise both from the spirit and from the hands, that invention was not separate from beauty. He grew up among 4 siblings, but one in particular, Dane, his older brother, stood like a bright flame in his early world. Dane was gifted, admired, and full of life. To young Nikola, he seemed almost otherworldly, faster, stronger, sharper in mind. The 2 boys shared long afternoons exploring the countryside, listening to the hum of bees, the rustle of reeds by the river, or the faint toll of church bells from the next valley. And then, suddenly, that world shattered. One morning, the village awoke to hushed voices: an accident, a fall, a terrible loss. Dane had died, leaving the Tesla home in silence. For Nikola, the event carved a shadow that never fully left him. He was only 5 years old, yet grief and wonder intertwined in him from that moment onward. The brilliance of his brother had left an echo, a void that would later drive Nikola to chase perfection, to reach for something beyond human measure. It is said that Milutin's eyes grew dim after that day, and his mother's quiet hums while she worked took on a softer, mournful tone. In the stillness that followed, Nikola found refuge in solitude. He would walk alone by the Lika River, watching the current flow past stones smoothed by time. He listened to the murmuring water and felt, in its endless motion, a strange kinship. Something about continuity, unseen energy, and silent persistence. Those early walks were perhaps the beginning of his lifelong meditation on the forces that shape existence, not the visible, but the invisible ones that hum beneath everything. At night, when the storms rolled in over Smiljan, he would lie awake and watch flashes of light illuminate the ceiling. The rumble of thunder felt to him not as chaos, but as an immense conversation of the heavens. He later recalled that it was in those nights of lightning that he first began to dream of controlling light itself, not as a boy's fantasy, but as a longing to understand what made the universe move. His mother noticed this curiosity and gently encouraged it. She built him small toys from wood and thread, puzzles that required patience and problem-solving. He delighted in taking them apart, studying how each piece worked, and then putting them together again, sometimes improved. When she used a spinning wheel, he would watch its motion endlessly, fascinated by how a single push could sustain rotation for so long. That quiet spinning would one day find an echo in his vision of rotating magnetic fields, the heart of alternating current. Life in Smiljan followed the rhythm of nature. Winters were long, the fields sleeping under frost. In those months, Nikola would sit near the fire, reading by the dim flame. He read of the stars, of science, of distant lands. He was drawn to stories that hinted at invisible forces, electricity, magnetism, the mysteries of light. Sometimes he would pause mid-reading, close his eyes, and imagine the phenomena he could not see. In his mind, the world unfolded in moving diagrams of energy and motion. He could visualize mechanisms so vividly that they seemed alive within him, a skill that would define his entire career. There was, however, something unusual about Nikola even then. He spoke softly, thought deeply, and seemed perpetually half in this world and half in another. Villagers would smile kindly, saying the boy was too clever for his age, though some whispered he was simply strange. Yet in that strangeness lay his serenity. He did not crave company, nor did he fear loneliness. He was content to listen to the ticking of clocks, the creak of the house, the sigh of wind through pine. These were the sounds that lulled his thoughts into harmony. His father, ever the man of structure, worried that Nikola's imagination would lead him astray. He wanted discipline, study, faith. When Nikola spoke of building machines that could fly or transmit power through the air, Milutin would smile, sometimes indulgently, sometimes sternly. "There are mysteries meant for God alone," he would say. Yet his mother's quiet encouragement balanced this. "Every mystery," she would whisper to her son, "exists only until someone finds the courage to see it differently." And so, Tesla's early world oscillated between two poles, faith and reason, poetry and precision. From that tension, a harmony began to form within him, like the alternating currents he would one day harness. As he grew older, the natural world became his sanctuary. The vast fields of Lika were alive with motion and stillness, a paradox that mirrored his own mind. He would lay in tall grass, eyes open to the infinite sky, and wonder how everything connected. The stars above, the soil beneath, the pulse within his chest. He often described moments of deep clarity, when he felt as though his thoughts extended beyond his body, merging with the fabric of the world. These were not scientific observations, but early meditations, glimpses into a consciousness that would always seek the unseen pattern behind visible reality. Years later, when Tesla spoke of his earliest memories, he would often return to that image of lightning on the night of his birth. It became a kind of symbol for him, the merging of creation and chaos, beauty and power, and he once said that he felt himself to be a spark of that same energy, forever drawn to understand the light that had heralded his arrival. In Smiljan, the seasons turned gently, each one teaching him something new. Spring taught him renewal, as snow melted into flowing streams. Summer brought endless light and the hum of insects, which reminded him of the constant motion of life. Autumn filled the air with the scent of harvest and decay, the balance of beginnings and endings. Winter silenced everything, a deep white stillness that wrapped the village in thought. Through these cycles, Tesla's sense of time became fluid, circular, not a straight line but a wave that rose and fell like energy itself. By the time he reached his early teens, the boy who had once traced raindrops was now inventing small devices of his own. He built water wheels and tried to harness currents from nearby streams. He studied the flight of insects and imagined mechanical wings. When his mother spun yarn by lamplight, he studied the motion of her hands, seeing in them the elegant patterns of repetition and force. The ordinary became extraordinary in his eyes. Every object, every motion a part of a vast and invisible system. In those quiet years of observation and imagination, the foundation of Nikola Tesla's mind was set. A mind that saw the world not in fragments, but in harmonies. A mind that could rest in silence and yet hum with energy. Smiljan may have been small, but within its quiet valleys, a vast universe began to stir. One that would one day send light across continents and connect humanity through the very air. For now, though, it was only a child's quiet dream beneath the whisper of the wind. A dream born of rain, light, and the gentle hum of his mother's spinning wheel. As the years unfolded gently in Smiljan, Nikola Tesla's world began to expand beyond the quiet walls of his home. His mind, already attuned to the rhythm of unseen forces, now sought to understand them through learning. Each morning carried the same serene ritual. The sound of his father's footsteps across wooden floors, the faint scent of coffee and ink, and the soft hum of his mother's weaving. The household moved with calm precision, but within Tesla, a restless curiosity stirred, like a current searching for its path. When he was old enough, Nikola began attending the village school. It was a modest building, its walls lined with maps and chalkboards dusted with faint traces of yesterday's lessons. The light filtered through tall windows, carrying motes of dust that seemed to drift in slow motion, like particles suspended in still air. To others, these were ordinary details, but to young Tesla, each moment was a wonder. He could lose himself simply watching how sunlight fell through glass, bending and scattering into delicate halos. Even then, the world spoke to him in patterns of energy and light. His teachers quickly noticed his unusual gift for memory. He could recite entire pages after a single reading, visualize equations, and recall even the smallest detail from days past. It was not a matter of effort. It was as though his mind photographed every lesson and filed it away in perfect clarity. Yet this gift came with solitude. Other children played easily, while Nikola often stood apart, lost in thought. He would trace the shapes of leaves, study the geometry of snowflakes, or listen to the hum of insects, as though deciphering some hidden code of nature. In these early years of schooling, he developed a fascination with numbers. Mathematics felt like music to him, not a discipline but a rhythm. He could see equations in his mind as flowing forms, shapes that turned and rotated in harmony. To him, numbers were alive. They shimmered with movement, connection, and purpose. And perhaps because of that, he developed habits others found strange. He counted his steps, calculated the volume of his meals, and refused to enter a room unless its dimensions felt right. The unseen order of things mattered to him deeply, not from superstition, but from an instinct that the universe itself moved by laws both elegant and invisible. By the time Tesla reached his adolescence, his father was transferred to the nearby town of Gospic. The move brought new surroundings, a more formal school, a broader curriculum, and a world that seemed to hum with possibilities. There, Nikola's appetite for knowledge became boundless. He devoured books on mathematics, physics, and mechanics. He read not just to learn, but to see, to visualize the workings behind every phenomenon. When his classmates memorized formulas, Nikola imagined the forces they described, the way magnetism might bend through space, or how waves of sound ripple through air. At home, his father continued to dream of a future for Nikola in the church. Milutin imagined his son as an eloquent orator, a scholar of theology. But Nikola's soul leaned toward another kind of truth, the truth found not in scripture, but in the pulse of nature itself. He loved his father deeply and feared disappointing him. Yet each day he found himself drawn to experiments and inventions rather than sermons or prayers. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, Nikola sat reading a book by his window. A volume by Marko Marulić, the Croatian humanist. The light grew dim, and he lit a candle. As the flame flickered, he watched how the melted wax pooled and reformed, how heat danced invisibly above the wick. Suddenly he found himself thinking not about the candle, but about the air itself. How energy moved through it, unseen but powerful. That small observation would stay with him for life. That energy, though invisible, could shape the world in profound ways. He began experimenting at home. His mother, seeing her son's quiet obsession, gave him bits of copper, iron, and wood. He built small devices, water wheels, rotating fans powered by the flow of a stream, even rudimentary turbines made from scrap. He delighted in discovering how force could be transformed, transferred, and multiplied. When his father's books on philosophy lay open on the table, Nikola would gently move them aside to make room for his miniature machines. In Gospic, he also encountered his first mentor, a teacher named Martin Sekulic, who recognized something rare in the boy. Sekulic was not only a teacher but a scientist in spirit, fascinated by chemistry and physics. His classroom was a place of wonder, filled with flasks, lenses, and bits of apparatus that shimmered with possibility. When Sekulic demonstrated the mysterious properties of static electricity, the spark leaping from one sphere to another, Nikola watched with quiet awe. The sound of that small spark seemed to awaken something deep within him. It was as if he had witnessed a fragment of the same lightning that had illuminated his birth. Sekulic nurtured Tesla's fascination gently, offering him access to the school's modest laboratory. There, Nikola spent long hours after class, performing experiments with magnets, currents, and light. The hum of the instruments, the faint scent of ozone, the subtle vibration of charged metal, these sensations filled him with peace. He would later say that his happiest moments were those spent in silent observation of natural laws revealing themselves. But his curiosity was not limited to science alone. He found beauty in poetry, geometry, and the patterns of thought itself. He once wrote that he could see entire inventions in his mind, complete and detailed, before ever building them. Even at that age, the ability had begun to bloom. When others sketched or tinkered, Nikola closed his eyes and entered a vivid inner world where machines turned and light danced. In those mental spaces he could test, refine, and perfect without a single piece of material. It was a gift born from imagination and solitude, the mind as a perfect laboratory. Yet amid his growing intellect, Tesla's health faltered. His long hours of study and introspection led to exhaustion. He developed fevers and fainting spells, and at times his mind seemed overwhelmed by the intensity of his thoughts. His parents worried, especially his father, who feared his son's fragile body might not survive the strain of his pursuits. In moments of weakness, Nikola would lie in bed, gazing at the patterns of sunlight on the wall, thinking of the invisible threads that connected all living things. Even illness could not quiet his curiosity. During one of these periods of sickness, a change occurred. His father, fearing for Nikola's life, promised that if he recovered he would not force him into the priesthood. Instead, he could pursue the career of his choice, engineering. The words ignited a spark of determination in the boy. It was as though a gate had opened inside him. He began to imagine the vast future that lay ahead, universities, inventions, discoveries that could transform human life. From that day, his recovery was steady, almost miraculous. It was as though his mind, now given purpose, healed his body in gratitude. When he returned to school, Tesla immersed himself once again in study, now with new clarity. He devoured scientific works by figures like Faraday and Ampere, studying the nature of electricity and magnetism. He saw in their experiments the outlines of a world he longed to enter, a world where energy was no longer confined, where the invisible could be harnessed. Yet even as he admired these great thinkers, he quietly believed there were deeper layers still unseen. He began to notice the limitations of direct current systems, the inefficiency, the waste, the uneven flow. Though still a student, he sensed that power could be made to move more harmoniously, more rhythmically, not in one direction, but alternating, as if breathing. He could not yet prove it, but the vision was forming. Like a seed resting beneath the soil, the idea of alternating current was already alive within him, waiting for its season to emerge. Outside the classroom, nature continued to be his silent companion. On evenings when the sky turned violet and the air filled with the scent of pine, he would walk along the riverbank lost in thought. He often spoke of how the rhythm of running water or the gentle hum of insects calmed his mind. These were moments not of study but of meditation. "There is no energy in matter itself," he would one day say, echoing those early reflections. "All energy is in motion, a rhythm that never ceases." Tesla's mind began to see the world as a symphony of vibrations. Every atom, every sound, every beam of light moving in harmony with unseen laws. To him, science was not cold or mechanical. It was music, and he was learning to hear it. As his adolescence drew to a close, he had outgrown the small schools of Gospich. The horizon called to him now, the wider world, new cities, greater challenges. But before he could go, fate would once again test his resilience. A fire broke out one night, consuming part of the family's property. Books, notes, and early creations were lost. Nikola watched the flames from a distance, the same light that had inspired him now devouring what he loved. Yet instead of despair, he felt a strange peace. The fire, he thought, was only transforming matter into light. Nothing truly vanished. Energy only changed form. It was, in its own way, a lesson, one that would define his future philosophy, that destruction and creation are merely different expressions of the same eternal current. And so, as he prepared to leave for his higher studies, the young Tesla carried with him not just knowledge but perspective, a serene awareness that the universe was alive with rhythm and intelligence. The boy from Smiljan, born beneath a storm, was ready to step into a new phase of discovery. He would soon enter the great halls of learning in Karlovac and beyond, but within him the true laboratory had already been built. A place where imagination and science would forever merge in quiet harmony. As Nikola Tesla stepped into the town of Karlovac, he entered a world both wider and quieter than he had known. The streets were lined with stone buildings, their walls bathed in the soft glow of early morning sun. There was a rhythm here that felt different, not the gentle cadence of Smiljan's fields, but the steady pulse of a town alive with study, commerce, and human motion. It was a rhythm that demanded attention, yet also offered opportunity, and Tesla found himself drawn to it with both caution and curiosity. The gymnasium in Karlovac was larger, with higher ceilings and classrooms that smelled of chalk and varnished wood. Here, knowledge was structured, rigorous, and unyielding. Yet within this structure, Nikola discovered freedom. He excelled in mathematics and physics, not out of obligation, but out of an inner need to understand the world. He would linger after classes, quietly observing experiments, testing principles in his mind, and visualizing outcomes. To others he appeared studious, reserved, and slightly distant. To himself he was beginning to perceive the hidden architecture of the universe. His teachers noticed his brilliance immediately. They spoke of his photographic memory, his extraordinary capacity for visualization, and his unusual persistence. Yet they also remarked on his singularity, the way he seemed lost in thought, as though the world around him existed merely as a stage for the dance of ideas within his mind. He read voraciously, absorbing texts on electricity, magnetism, and mechanics, often carrying multiple books at once, as if his arms could not hold the weight of knowledge fast enough. In Karlovac, Tesla faced challenges that were new and profound. The discipline of formal education sometimes clashed with the intensity of his imagination. Teachers expected adherence to rote methods, while Tesla's mind leaped ahead, seeing connections invisible to others. When asked to solve problems by conventional methods, he often imagined entire devices and processes in his mind before committing anything to paper. This capacity for mental visualization would later become one of his most remarkable traits, the ability to simulate complex inventions entirely before physically constructing them. Beyond academics, the town offered Tesla glimpses of human life in broader detail. He observed the rhythms of the marketplace, the labor of craftsmen, and the quiet dignity of townsfolk who moved with purpose. He found inspiration in simple mechanics, the spinning of mill wheels, the balancing of scales, the turning of gears. To him, these were not mere tools, but demonstrations of universal principles at work. Every motion, he believed, held a secret, a pattern to be understood, a lesson in harmony. Amid these observations, Tesla's health remained a delicate thread. His intense focus and long hours of study sometimes led to periods of exhaustion, yet these moments of physical weakness often coincided with profound mental insight. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling and visualize rotating magnetic fields, the flow of currents, or the dance of particles unseen. The boundaries between wakefulness and imagination blurred, forming a landscape in which discovery moved naturally, almost effortlessly through his mind. One of the most defining aspects of Tesla's youth in Karlovac was his growing sense of philosophy. While immersed in the practicalities of mathematics and physics, he remained a thinker in the broader sense, pondering the nature of life, energy, and human existence. He began to articulate, even in these early years, a quiet belief that the universe operated through laws that were both precise and beautiful, and that human understanding was a matter of attuning oneself to these rhythms rather than imposing control over them. This insight would underpin his later approach to invention, not as domination over nature but as collaboration with it. Tesla also carried with him a persistent memory of loss. The death of his brother Dane remained a quiet companion, shaping his sense of empathy, solitude, and purpose. He often wrote in his private journals of moments of deep reflection by moonlight or under the rustling leaves, thinking of the fragility and continuity of life. These meditative exercises nurtured patience, an ability to wait for ideas to fully form, and a recognition that understanding required both time and observation. In this way, personal sorrow became a teacher, guiding him toward the gentle rhythms that would characterize his scientific methodology. In Karlovac, Tesla formed his first meaningful friendships, though they were few and carefully chosen. He gravitated toward peers who shared a curiosity about the natural world, those who asked questions not just of fact, but of essence. Together, they discussed mechanics, debated the nature of electricity, and marveled at the potential of human thought. Yet even in companionship, Tesla maintained a profound inner solitude, a quiet space within which he could reflect, dream, and visualize the invisible threads of energy connecting the world. The town itself was steeped in history and culture, providing an external context that subtly shaped Tesla's perspective. The surrounding landscapes, the rolling hills, the river that traced its slow path through the valley, the forests echoing with birdsong, reminded him that human invention was only one part of a larger universe. History, he observed, was a record of attempts to understand, harness, and sometimes misinterpret the forces of nature. From this, he learned patience and humility, recognizing that discovery often came not from haste, but from careful attention and reverent observation. During these formative years, Tesla's fascination with electricity deepened. He conducted small experiments at home and in school, observing how currents could be directed, manipulated, and amplified. He was particularly intrigued by the relationship between electricity and magnetism, sensing a profound unity that hinted at possibilities beyond the conventional knowledge of the time. These ideas were never pursued with urgency or showmanship. Rather, they were meditative explorations, each step taken with care, each observation recorded with precision and patience. Evenings in Karlovac were a time of contemplation. Tesla would walk the quiet streets after dark, listening to the soft clatter of shutters, the distant murmur of livestock settling for the night, and the faint whistle of wind through the eaves. These walks were more than leisure. They were an extension of his intellectual practice. The natural world, the rhythms of human life, and the soft interplay of light and shadow became a canvas upon which his imagination could move freely. As he neared the end of his time in Karlovac, Tesla began to consolidate the lessons of his early life. He had learned to observe without interference, to listen without speaking, and to imagine without limit. His mental faculties were honed not just through study, but through reflection, solitude, and quiet meditation on both the seen and unseen. The interplay of loss, curiosity, and wonder had forged a unique equilibrium, a mind capable of deep insight, creative visualization, and sustained focus. By the time he left Karlovac to pursue higher education in Graz, Austria, Nikola Tesla was no longer merely a bright student. He was a young thinker attuned to the subtleties of energy, motion, and human experience. He had cultivated patience, vision, and an appreciation for the harmony underlying all phenomena. These qualities would guide him through the next stages of life, as he began to turn the seeds of curiosity into the tangible explorations of science. It was in Karlovac that Tesla learned a critical lesson, one he carried into adulthood. That true understanding comes not from rushing toward answers, but from quiet, deliberate observation. That knowledge, when combined with imagination, becomes wisdom, and that the universe, vast and intricate, could be approached with both reverence and joy. The young man who had watched lightning dance over Smiljan now stood poised at the threshold of a broader world. In his heart, the rhythm of discovery had taken root, and the silent current of curiosity flowed steadily forward, unseen, inexhaustible, and profoundly alive. As Nikola Tesla arrived in the city of Graz, Austria, the air felt charged with possibility. The city was larger, busier, and more structured than the quiet towns of his youth. Cobbled streets echoed with the steps of scholars, merchants, and travelers from distant lands. Steam rose from chimneys, mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread and the subtle tang of industry. For Tesla, every detail was alive, every motion a lesson in balance and energy, and every sound a note in the symphony of the world. He entered the Graz Polytechnic Institute, a bastion of higher learning where the study of engineering, mathematics, and physics was approached with rigor and discipline. The classrooms were filled with students from across Europe, their accents and habits diverse, their ambitions varied. Yet amid this variety, Tesla immediately felt a sense of alignment. Here was a place that honored inquiry, where precision and imagination could coexist. From the first day, he was captivated by the machines and experiments around him. Generators hummed with potential, dynamos spun with relentless energy, and coils sparked with electrical tension. Tesla observed everything with an intensity that bordered on meditation. He did not merely watch the equipment, he visualized it, the flow of current through copper wire, the invisible magnetic fields looping and twisting through space. In his mind, the apparatus was alive, a partner in a quiet exploration of natural law. One of Tesla's early lessons involved direct current systems, the dominant form of electrical technology at the time. He meticulously studied how electricity moved in a single direction, how it could light a bulb or power a motor. Yet even as he mastered the existing theory, his imagination probed further. He began to envision electricity not as a straight path, but as a wave, a rhythm, a current that could alternate, oscillate, and dance through space. It was an idea revolutionary in its simplicity, yet profound in its implications. His professors recognized his talent quickly. They were impressed by his ability to solve complex problems mentally, often without notes or sketches. While others labored over calculations, Tesla could visualize every step, seeing the movement of electrons and the alignment of magnetic fields as though they existed tangibly before him. This skill, rare and extraordinary, became the foundation of his approach to invention. He would later describe it as a kind of internal cinema, in which machines could be assembled, tested, and perfected entirely within the mind before ever touching a tool. Outside the laboratory, Tesla maintained the same habits that had marked his childhood: quiet observation, extended walks, and a profound engagement with the natural world. The parks and avenues of Graz became extensions of his study, offering lessons in motion, symmetry, and energy that no classroom could provide. He would watch the flutter of pigeons, the turning of water wheels in the river, or the sway of trees in the wind, contemplating the invisible forces that guided each movement. These were moments of reflection as much as calculation, quiet meditation where science and imagination intertwined. The young student also faced the first taste of academic pressure and personal challenge. The intensity of the curriculum demanded discipline, and not all of his peers were kind to his singular focus. Tesla, reserved and immersed in his own mental explorations, often felt isolated. Yet rather than diminishing his curiosity, this solitude strengthened it. He learned to rely on his internal compass, to trust the clarity of his own observations, and to cultivate a patience that would serve him throughout his life. One evening, during a particularly long winter, Tesla experienced a moment that would linger in memory. He had been conducting experiments with static electricity, using rudimentary equipment borrowed from the institute. The air was dry and faint sparks leapt from one conductor to another. As he watched, a sudden flash, small, yet brilliant, seemed to pulse in harmony with his heartbeat. He was struck by a sensation of revelation, a quiet confirmation that the energy he sought to understand was not distant or abstract, but present, tangible and responsive to careful attention. It was a first spark of insight into the principles that would later govern his work with alternating current. Beyond technical study, Tesla was also drawn to broader ideas, pondering the nature of reality itself. He read works by philosophers and scientists, from Faraday to Volta, absorbing both the technical and the conceptual. He began to form a philosophy rooted in observation and reflection, that nature operated according to universal laws, and that understanding these laws required both rigorous study and imaginative vision. The mind, he realized, could extend beyond the limitations of the body, simulating mechanisms, energy flows, and even entire inventions before any material effort was made. Yet even amid intellectual excitement, Tesla's life in Graz was not without tension. Financial constraints pressed upon him, and periods of illness, familiar from his youth, intermittently slowed his progress. He found solace in long, solitary walks along the Moor River, listening to the water, watching the reflections of streetlights ripple on its surface. These walks became a form of meditation, a way to harmonize his inner energy with the rhythms of the world around him. He often reflected on the lessons of his childhood. That observation, patience, and humility were as essential as knowledge itself. During these years, Tesla also began to experiment with electromechanical devices in his spare time. Small motors, turbines, and generators were constructed in his mind before ever being built. He imagined each component, each wire, each magnetic field, and allowed the invention to evolve internally until it seemed perfect. Only then did he attempt to translate the vision into reality. This method, combining rigorous mental simulation with careful physical experimentation, became a hallmark of his genius, a way to minimize error, optimize efficiency, and respect the unseen laws of nature. Socially, Tesla remained largely solitary, yet he was not devoid of connection. He engaged with a few fellow students who shared his interests, discussing experiments, debating theories, and exchanging observations. These relationships were subtle, gentle, and thoughtful, partnerships of minds rather than companions for idle amusement. Tesla found joy not in volume or popularity, but in depth and precision. Each conversation, each shared observation, was an opportunity to refine his understanding and explore ideas more fully. As semesters passed, the young man from Smiljan began to envision a larger world, cities lit by electric light, machines powered by currents flowing invisibly through wires, communication that transcended distance. These were not mere fantasies. They were possibilities he could almost see, almost touch, in the intricate theater of his mind. Each vision brought a sense of serenity and purpose, a quiet anticipation that his work might one day harmonize human life with the forces of nature. Yet even as these ideas expanded, Tesla's approach remained grounded in patience and care. He understood that knowledge was a living process, and that true discovery could not be rushed. His nights were often spent lying awake, visualizing, refining, and imagining, sometimes for hours, until the faint glow of dawn touched the rooftops of Graz. In those quiet hours, he felt the pulse of energy in all things, a rhythm that connected machines, matter, and life itself. By the time he completed his early years in Graz, Tesla had not only absorbed the technical knowledge necessary for engineering, but had cultivated a disciplined, reflective, and imaginative mind. He was ready to move beyond the classroom, to test his ideas against the wider world, and to explore the frontiers of energy and electricity in ways no one had yet imagined. The boy who had once walked the fields of Smiljan watching lightning and rivers had become a young man poised at the threshold of discovery, carrying the quiet, persistent current of curiosity that would guide him for the rest of his life. In the quiet corners of his modest dormitory room, Nikola Tesla began to wrestle with the invisible. The world of electricity was no longer a textbook abstraction. It had become, in his mind, a living, breathing presence. He would sit for hours, visualizing currents as flowing streams, magnetic fields as twisting ribbons, and the interplay of forces as an intricate dance choreographed by nature itself. To others, these musings might have seemed excessive or fanciful, but for Tesla, they were precise and necessary steps in understanding the fabric of reality. The early experiments he conducted in Graz were humble in appearance but profound in intent. Using copper wire, rudimentary coils, and the simplest batteries, he began to explore how electric currents could move, how they could be influenced, and how they could be transformed. He paid attention to every detail: the hum of the current, the faint warmth in the wire, the spark that occasionally leaped when two conductors approached. These minute observations were absorbed with an intensity that allowed him to see patterns invisible to ordinary eyes. It was during this period that Tesla first began to conceive of the idea that would later define him: alternating current. While the world relied heavily on direct current, flowing in one unbroken line from generator to appliance, Tesla sensed that electricity need not be constrained to a single direction. He imagined a rhythm, a pulse, a movement that could oscillate back and forth, like the gentle sway of a tree in the wind or the breathing of the earth itself. He could see, in his mind's eye, the immense possibilities: more efficient transmission over distances, smoother operation of machines, and the potential to illuminate entire cities. These thoughts did not come suddenly, like a thunderbolt of revelation. They arose slowly, in quiet hours of contemplation and careful study. Tesla would often close his eyes and see the circuits, coils, and magnetic fields as three-dimensional forms, rotating and shifting in harmony. He tested his ideas mentally, correcting flaws, optimizing pathways, and refining the flow of energy. The inventions were complete before any tools were touched, a process that allowed him to explore limitless permutations with nothing but thought and observation. In the evenings, when the streets of Graz lay under the soft hush of winter snow, Tesla often wandered outside. He observed the way light reflected off icy rooftops, how shadows shifted with lamplight, and how sound carried across the frozen air. These walks were meditative, a continuation of his experiments in a different medium. He began to understand that electricity, like wind or water, was a force that moved according to principles that were simultaneously simple and elegant, yet invisible to the casual observer. The young inventor's solitary pursuits were not without challenges. Limited financial resources constrained the materials he could use, and his delicate health often required periods of rest. Yet these limitations did not dampen his imagination. He learned to work with what he had, to simulate devices in his mind, and to observe the natural world for inspiration. Even a simple water wheel, spinning steadily in a nearby stream, could reveal the secrets of motion, leverage, and energy transformation. Nature became both teacher and laboratory. Tesla also began to refine his philosophy of invention. He believed that creation was not a matter of force or dominance over nature, but of harmonizing with its laws. He would later write that the mind, in perfect clarity, could discern the currents of the universe and guide them without friction or error. This approach was inherently meditative. Invention was not rushed, it was cultivated, like a seed that grows into a tree over time. Each spark of insight was nurtured patiently, and each failure was absorbed as a lesson, not a disappointment. During these years, Tesla also experienced moments of what he described as visionary illumination. While lying in bed or walking alone, he would see entire machines, complete with moving parts and functional circuits, projected vividly in his imagination. These visions were so precise that he could measure them, test them, and improve them entirely within his mind. It was as though he had developed an internal laboratory, one unbounded by material limitations, where every idea could be explored to perfection. Social life remained sparse. Tesla preferred quiet companionship to casual conversation, and his friendships were few but meaningful. When he engaged with peers, it was often to discuss concepts of energy, motion, and the nature of reality. He sought minds that could match his curiosity, that would explore rather than merely observe. In these conversations, he practiced articulation of thought, learning to translate the vivid imagery of his mind into language, diagrams, and eventually, physical prototypes. One evening, Tesla visited a lecture on magnetism conducted by a visiting professor. He watched a simple demonstration of a rotating magnetic field, and something within him clicked. Though the professor's experiment was basic, Tesla immediately recognized a deeper principle: the potential to harness rotational energy in a controlled, continuous manner. That night, walking home under the dim glow of gas lamps, he mentally sketched the possibilities. The concept of alternating current and the rotating magnetic fields that would enable it took a more tangible shape in his mind. Even as he cultivated these technical insights, Tesla remained attentive to the broader implications of his work. He contemplated not just how electricity could power machines, but how it could transform human life, lighting homes, connecting distant cities, and extending the reach of human knowledge. He imagined a world in which energy flowed invisibly through wires and the air itself, bridging distances and improving quality of life. These contemplations were never hurried or grandiose. They were gentle visions, quietly unfolding like dawn over a peaceful landscape. His experiments began to take more physical form. Using copper wire, iron cores, and small motors, he created prototypes that allowed him to observe the principles he had long envisioned. Each successful demonstration brought a quiet sense of fulfillment, a confirmation that the universe responded to careful observation and thoughtful imagination. He celebrated each discovery with calm wonder, aware that every insight was part of a larger, interconnected pattern. Throughout this time, Tesla remained deeply introspective. He reflected on the nature of energy, the relationship between cause and effect, and the subtle rhythms that governed both human and natural systems. His private journals, filled with sketches, notes, and philosophical musings, reveal a young mind fully engaged with the world, yet attuned to the invisible currents beneath its surface. By the end of his years in Graz, Tesla had achieved more than mastery of his studies. He had cultivated a profound understanding of how to think, visualize, and create. He had learned that true discovery required patience, imagination, and a willingness to perceive what others could not. He had glimpsed the vast potential of alternating current, and he had developed the mental discipline to bring that vision into reality when the time came. The city, with its streets, laboratories, and lectures, had been a crucible for his intellect, but the quiet, reflective solitude that he carried from his youth remained his true foundation. The rhythm of nature, the pattern of light, the invisible hum of energy. These were constants, grounding him even as he reached toward revolutionary ideas. In those moments, Tesla was not merely a student or inventor. He was a thinker aligned with the deeper currents of the universe, listening carefully, imagining vividly, and preparing for the first real sparks of a lifelong journey. After the disciplined years in Graz, the world seemed to open its doors to Nikola Tesla in ways both exhilarating and subtle. He traveled to Paris, the city of light, industry, and quiet possibility. The streets were alive with the low hum of commerce and invention. Horse-drawn carriages clattered over cobblestones while gas lamps flickered against the dusky sky. Steam from factories mingled with the scent of fresh bread and rain-soaked earth, creating a sensory rhythm that both grounded and inspired him. To Tesla, Paris was more than a city. It was a laboratory in motion, a place where the abstract principles he had imagined could begin to touch reality. He found employment with the Continental Edison Company, a growing enterprise tasked with designing and maintaining electrical systems across Europe. Though the work was practical and sometimes tedious, It offered him his first direct exposure to large-scale electrical engineering. He inspected generators, repaired motors, and observed the operation of direct current systems that powered homes, factories, and public lighting. Every wire, every spark, every subtle hum of machinery became a lesson, a data point to be absorbed, studied, and mentally reconstructed. Tesla's genius revealed itself quietly yet unmistakably. While most engineers relied heavily on diagrams and incremental calculation, he approached problems through visualization. He could conceive of an entire machine, see its function, anticipate its flaws, and mentally adjust its design before touching any tools. Colleagues noticed his unusual method, a mind moving fluidly through possibilities rather than laboriously through computation. Tesla had spent years visualizing alternatives, and now, with access to real equipment and technical collaboration, he could explore the concept of alternating current in practical terms. He began sketching the theoretical frameworks that would allow electricity to flow rhythmically, reversing direction in a controlled pattern, enabling power to travel longer distances without significant loss. Even as he engaged with professional responsibilities, Tesla maintained his meditative approach to study. Early mornings were spent in observation, listening to the hum of Parisian streets, feeling the subtle vibration of machinery, or noting the way sunlight glinted off the Seine. These quiet moments nourished his creativity, allowing his mind to integrate theory, observation, and vision. He began to understand that the world of invention required more than technical skill. It required alignment with the subtle currents of energy, matter, and human expectation. In Paris, Tesla also encountered early professional challenges. He was a young foreigner in a bustling city, navigating complex hierarchies and expectations. Not every idea he proposed was received with enthusiasm. Some colleagues were entrenched in established methods, reluctant to explore the alternatives he suggested. Yet Tesla remained patient, relying on clarity of thought and precision of vision to guide him. He learned to present his ideas with calm conviction, demonstrating their elegance rather than demanding acceptance. In these interactions, he honed the delicate balance between innovation and diplomacy, a skill that would prove essential in his later career. Outside the workshops, Tesla explored Paris with the same quiet attentiveness that had marked his youth. He wandered along the Seine at twilight, observing reflections in the water, listening to the distant notes of street musicians, and feeling the subtle pulse of the city's energy. These excursions were not mere leisure. They were extensions of his laboratory. Nature, urban life, and human invention became threads in a single tapestry, each influencing and informing the other. He found patterns in the rhythm of footsteps, the rotation of gears, and the oscillation of currents alike, seeing a continuity between human endeavor and universal law. During this period, Tesla also began to consider the broader implications of his work. Electricity, he realized, was more than light or power. It was a medium capable of connecting people, transforming cities, and expanding the possibilities of human civilization. His meditative observations of motion, rhythm, and energy informed not only his technical thinking, but also his vision of the world, a world where innovation could harmonize with nature rather than dominate it, where progress was measured not in force alone, but in elegance, efficiency, and beauty. One of the subtle yet formative experiences in Paris was Tesla's encounter with early alternating current machinery. Though rudimentary, these systems allowed him to experiment conceptually, envisioning improvements and mentally simulating designs with increasing sophistication. He began to see how a carefully controlled alternating current could drive motors more efficiently, reduce energy loss over long distances, and lay the groundwork for large-scale electrical distribution. These insights were not shouted or broadcast. They were quiet realizations unfolding in the mind, like sunlight slowly illuminating a previously shadowed corner of a room. Tesla's solitude remained a constant companion. Even amidst the energy of the city and the bustle of workshops, he sought time alone, sitting in cafes, walking along quiet avenues, or standing beneath the soft lamplight of Parisian streets. These moments were contemplative, allowing him to integrate observation, calculation, and imagination. In solitude, the rhythms of electricity, magnetism, and human motion became clear. In observation, he discerned patterns that others overlooked. In imagination, he rehearsed inventions that had not yet been built. Social interaction, while minimal, was measured and meaningful. He engaged with mentors, exchanging ideas with engineers and physicists who recognized his exceptional capacity for insight. These relationships nurtured his growth without overwhelming the inner calm that allowed his imagination to flourish. Tesla's friendships, though few, were characterized by depth, a shared understanding of inquiry, patience, and the pursuit of knowledge over acclaim. By the end of his time in Paris, Tesla had achieved a quiet mastery over the foundations of his work. He had observed, experimented, and visualized in ways that few of his contemporaries could imagine. He had glimpsed the potential of alternating current, seen the rhythm of energy as a malleable and elegant force, and prepared himself to introduce these ideas to a world still largely bound by direct current limitations. Paris had shaped him not through grandeur or drama, but through experience, observation, and the patient unfolding of insight. The young man who had walked the hills of Smiljan and studied in the halls of Graz now stood on the threshold of transformative invention. His mind, disciplined yet free, was ready to turn quiet contemplation into tangible creation. The current of his curiosity, long nurtured in solitude, flowed steadily forward, carrying with it the promise of discoveries that would illuminate both cities and imaginations alike. The voyage across the Atlantic was long and quiet, yet for Nikola Tesla, it was a time of reflection and anticipation. The ship cut through dark waters, leaving gentle wakes that glimmered under the night sky. Stars hung like distant lanterns, their light traveling across vast emptiness, and Tesla found himself pondering the invisible currents that connected all things. To him, the motion of the sea, the flicker of lamps on deck, and even the rhythm of the ship's engines were manifestations of energy, tangible yet mysterious, orderly yet fluid. When he finally stepped onto the docks of New York City, the world seemed to hum with possibility. The air carried a mixture of salt, smoke, and the faint tang of iron from the piers. Crowds moved with purpose, horses and carriages clattered along cobblestone streets, and the distant clanging of factory bells punctuated the rhythm of the city. Tesla, always observant, felt the pulse of this new environment, a dynamic interplay of human ambition and technological progress. The city itself was alive, a living laboratory in which ideas could grow, take shape, and interact with the practical realities of life. Tesla's first days were spent navigating the unfamiliar landscape. He found lodging in modest quarters and quickly sought employment. Fate guided him to Thomas Edison's company, a place where direct current systems dominated and industrial innovation flourished. The practical experience he gained here was invaluable, offering insight into large-scale electrical infrastructure and the workings of industry. Yet Tesla's mind, ever expansive, immediately began exploring beyond the limits of existing technology. While the city buzzed with the energy of conventional systems, he imagined currents that could flow more efficiently, machines that could operate with elegance, and a world illuminated and powered in harmony with natural laws. His interactions with Edison were polite but tinged with philosophical difference. Edison, a man of practical invention, relied on experimentation and trial-and-error methods. Tesla, by contrast, approached problems with visualization and internal simulation. He could foresee the function of machines, anticipate points of failure, and adjust designs entirely in his imagination before ever touching a tool. While Edison valued rapid implementation, Tesla valued insight, clarity, and the silent perfection of ideas before manifestation. This contrast would later define their divergent paths in the history of electricity. Despite challenges, Tesla quickly proved himself capable. He repaired and enhanced existing equipment, introduced minor improvements, and demonstrated an understanding of electrical principles that exceeded his peers. Yet his ambitions were larger than immediate recognition. He had already begun to refine the concept of alternating current, mentally testing generators and motors, and imagining the flow of energy across vast distances. Every wire, coil, and spark became a study in invisible forces, each discovery a meditation on the nature of energy itself. In New York, Tesla also began to experience the subtle interplay between invention and human connection. While immersed in work, he observed the city around him with a reflective eye. Children running along the docks, the swish of waves against pilings, the creak of bridges responding to weight and motion. These observations, though seemingly mundane, enriched his understanding of systems, motion, and equilibrium. He began to see machines not merely as tools, but as extensions of natural law, objects that, when aligned with invisible currents, could harmonize with human life rather than dominate it. Tesla's early experiments in the city were modest in scale but profound in implication. He constructed small devices in rented spaces, testing ideas about magnetic fields, energy flow, and the possibilities of oscillating current. Each success was met with calm satisfaction rather than fanfare, each failure noted and analyzed with patient detachment. His method was consistent: observe, visualize, refine, and implement, treating the process as both art and science. Social interactions were minimal but intentional. Tesla gravitated toward colleagues who shared his curiosity, those willing to discuss principles, mechanisms, and the philosophy of energy. He was less interested in acclaim or competition than in understanding, in perceiving patterns, refining techniques, and exploring the hidden harmonies of the physical world. His friendships, though few, were deep. They provided intellectual nourishment while allowing him the solitude necessary for mental rehearsal and reflection. The city itself provided new inspiration. Its emerging electrical networks, the flicker of incandescent lamps, and the rhythmic pulse of industry suggested possibilities beyond what textbooks or laboratories could convey. Tesla began to imagine a world illuminated not only by direct current, but by an invisible oscillating energy, a force that could travel longer distances with less loss power entire cities efficiently and create a new architecture of electrical systems. These ideas were nascent, often sketched hastily on paper or visualized internally, yet they contained the seeds of the breakthroughs to come. During quiet evenings, Tesla would wander Manhattan's streets, observing the interplay of light, shadow, and motion. The hum of electrical wires, the distant clang of trains, and the soft murmur of the river all became part of a larger meditation. He pondered not only the mechanics of electricity, but the deeper implications of energy, its ethical, philosophical, and societal dimensions. How could this invisible force be harnessed to serve humanity? Could progress be achieved without disruption, without discord, and yet with elegance and efficiency? These questions guided his work as surely as any calculation or formula. By the end of his first months in New York, Tesla had laid the groundwork for a remarkable period of invention. He had assimilated practical knowledge from Edison's systems, refined his own theoretical insights, and begun to conceive machines that would operate on alternating current principles. He had entered the world as an observer and thinker, and he was beginning to emerge as a visionary, capable of transforming not only electrical technology, but the way humanity understood and interacted with energy. In the calm of his small room, amid sketches, coils, and the quiet hum of distant industry, Tesla prepared for the first significant demonstrations of his ideas. The city, with all its motion and promise, was a stage, but the real laboratory was his mind, disciplined, reflective, and attuned to the invisible currents of nature. Here, in solitude and contemplation, the foundations of modern electricity began to take shape, not through haste or spectacle, but through patient observation, internal visualization, and a profound respect for the laws of the universe. In the months following his arrival in New York, Nikola Tesla moved steadily from observation to creation. He had absorbed the practical rhythms of industrial electricity, familiarized himself with the hum of dynamos and motors, and gained insight into the logistical demands of powering a city. Yet his mind, ever restless and deliberate, was already reaching beyond conventional constraints. He envisioned currents that flowed not in a single rigid line, but in oscillating waves, a concept that promised both efficiency and elegance. This was the pulse of innovation, subtle but relentless, and Tesla felt its rhythm deep within his consciousness. Working quietly in his rented workshop, Tesla began to construct prototypes of alternating current generators and motors. The equipment was modest, copper coils, iron cores, rotating discs, and small batteries assembled with care. Yet each component was conceived with meticulous attention, for Tesla's imagination had already tested the devices in complete detail. He could see the movement of magnetic fields, feel the tug of invisible forces, and anticipate points of friction or inefficiency, all within his mind before any physical construction. Each successful trial confirmed his inner simulations, and each minor flaw became a guide for refinement. Tesla's approach contrasted sharply with the prevailing engineering culture, which often favored trial and error experimentation and visible, tangible results. For him, the mental rehearsal of invention was not a shortcut but a necessity. It allowed him to explore infinite possibilities, to see the full behavior of devices, and to achieve efficiency that conventional methods could not match. This capacity, cultivated from years of meditative study and visualization, would define the uniqueness of his work and the transformative potential of his discoveries. One evening, after hours of silent work, Tesla experienced what he later described as a moment of profound clarity. The coils, discs, and circuits before him were not yet operational, but in his mind he could see them rotating in perfect harmony. The alternating current flowed effortlessly, energizing motors with smooth, continuous power. The image was so vivid that it almost felt tangible. He realized that this invisible force, alternating, oscillating, and harmonized with nature's laws, could revolutionize the way electricity was generated, transmitted, and applied. Tesla's first public opportunity came unexpectedly. Through a series of professional contacts, he was invited to demonstrate his ideas to a small group of engineers and investors. The room was modestly lit, the air filled with the quiet murmur of curiosity. Tesla set up his equipment with calm precision, allowing the devices to speak for themselves. When the current flowed, lights glowed steadily, motors turned without falter, and the observers sensed something both familiar and astonishing. A new rhythm of energy, smooth, efficient, and subtly elegant. While the demonstration was technically simple, its implications were profound. For Tesla, the moment was less about recognition than about validation, confirmation that his vision, long rehearsed in solitude and imagination, could manifest reliably in the physical world. He noted each reaction, each detail, each subtle variation in the equipment's behavior, understanding that these observations would guide future refinement. The quiet, measured feedback of the audience became part of the iterative process, another current in the larger flow of invention. Yet even as he demonstrated his ideas, Tesla faced skepticism. Established engineers and industrialists, invested in the familiar methods of direct current, found it difficult to imagine a world in which electricity could flow back and forth, oscillating invisibly yet reliably powering homes and machines. Tesla, however, remained undeterred. He had long learned to trust the rigor of thought, the clarity of visualization, and the patient unfolding of principles. Skepticism did not deter him. It sharpened his resolve, inviting him to refine his explanations, strengthen his designs, and perfect the elegance of his solutions. Amid professional work, Tesla continued his meditative engagement with the world. The hum of the city, the flicker of streetlights, and the subtle vibration of machinery became both inspiration and instruction. He observed the flow of traffic, the movement of pedestrians, and even the rhythm of the river, perceiving patterns analogous to electrical currents. Each observation reinforced his understanding that systems, whether natural, mechanical, or social, operated according to principles of rhythm, balance, and efficiency. Tesla's solitude remained essential. He often rose before dawn, walking along the quiet piers of the East River, contemplating the invisible currents that he had come to perceive as the underlying pulse of reality. The gentle lapping of water against pilings, the whisper of wind through masts, and the distant chime of factory bells provided a meditative soundtrack to reflection. In these hours, technical insight and philosophical understanding coalesced, merging the mechanics of invention with a serene comprehension of energy as a universal phenomenon. During this period, Tesla also began corresponding with influential figures in the electrical industry, sharing sketches, concepts, and theoretical analyses. His letters, precise and articulate, conveyed not only technical insight, but also the philosophical underpinnings of his work. That energy, when aligned with natural laws, could be harnessed efficiently and harmoniously. These exchanges, though often understated, gradually built a network of recognition and support, establishing Tesla as both a thinker and a practitioner whose vision extended beyond immediate utility to systemic transformation. As the months passed, Tesla's alternating current experiments matured. He constructed more complex generators, refined magnetic field arrangements, and demonstrated motors capable of smooth, sustained operation. Each success reinforced a quiet confidence that electricity could be transformed from a constrained, unidirectional resource into a flowing, oscillating force capable of reaching across cities and landscapes. He envisioned networks of energy, quietly powering homes, industries, and transportation systems, a world subtly illuminated, harmonized with the rhythms of nature and human life. This period was not without struggle. Financial constraints, technical setbacks, and professional skepticism weighed heavily. Yet Tesla approached each challenge with the calm patience that had been cultivated since youth. Failures were recorded, analyzed, and integrated into future designs. Obstacles became opportunities for deeper understanding, and setbacks a reminder that insight often required observation over time, reflection, and careful iteration. By the end of this stage, Tesla had achieved more than technical progress. He had begun to manifest a philosophy of invention, that creativity arises from careful observation, rigorous mental rehearsal, and alignment with natural principles. He understood that the role of the inventor was not merely to create, but to perceive, to harmonize, and to translate invisible forces into functional and beneficial systems. This philosophy would guide the trajectory of his life's work, shaping not only his inventions, but also the vision of the future they would enable. In the quiet of his workshop, surrounded by coils, motors, and the faint hum of electrical currents, Tesla felt a deep resonance with the world. Each experiment, each observation, each subtle insight was a note in a symphony of discovery, a rhythm of energy that connected mind, matter, and environment. Alternating current, once a concept rehearsed silently in his imagination, was now emerging as a tangible reality, a pulse of innovation that would illuminate cities, inspire contemporaries, and quietly reshape the human experience of energy. By the time Nikola Tesla began to fully demonstrate the potential of alternating current on a broader scale, he had moved from the quiet immersion of thought and experiment to the delicate balance of public engagement. New York was no longer simply a city of observation. It had become a stage upon which his ideas could enter the collective imagination. The transition was subtle, yet profound, a bridge between private vision and public realization. Tesla's early demonstrations had already hinted at what was possible. Motors ran smoothly, currents oscillated with precision, and lights glowed steadily, free from the flicker and inefficiency of direct current systems. Small audiences, comprised of engineers and curious investors, witnessed these trials, often with polite skepticism that gradually softened into recognition. Tesla himself remained calm, attentive not to applause but to observation, the minute behavior of machines, the rhythm of currents, and the responses of those watching. To him, these elements were all part of the same unfolding pattern, a quiet symphony of energy and human curiosity. It was in this period that Tesla began collaborating with industrial partners to scale his alternating current concepts. Practical challenges arose immediately. Generators needed refinement, transmission lines required optimization, and electrical loads demanded careful calculation. Tesla approached each problem with the same meditative rigor that had characterized his work from the beginning. He visualized the entire network in his mind, mentally testing every connection, anticipating loss, and adjusting designs before any physical construction began. His ability to hold the complex system internally allowed him to propose solutions that seemed almost effortless to onlookers. The first large-scale applications of his work brought both excitement and subtle tension. City planners, engineers, and investors navigated uncharted territory, balancing established practices with Tesla's innovative proposals. The underlying currents of electricity mirrored the currents of human interaction, a delicate negotiation between established norms and visionary ideas. Tesla, ever patient, allowed the technology to speak for itself. Demonstrations were quiet but compelling. Lights illuminating streets with steady brilliance, motors operating without overheating or interruption, and energy flowing efficiently across distances previously thought impractical. Through these successes, Tesla's reputation began to grow. Newspapers occasionally mentioned his demonstrations, describing a new method of harnessing electricity with hints of awe. Yet Tesla never sought public attention for its own sake. Fame was secondary to discovery, to the refinement of knowledge, and to the realization of potential. He often walked the quiet avenues after evening experiments, reflecting on the broader implications of his work. How electricity could transform daily life, expand human capability, and bring cities into alignment with a more harmonious rhythm of energy. This period also deepened Tesla's philosophical engagement with invention. He saw electricity not as a commodity to be exploited, but as a medium to be understood, harmonized, and directed thoughtfully. Every design, every improvement, carried a dual purpose: technical efficiency and ethical responsibility. In his private journals, he reflected on the responsibilities of creators, the beauty of natural law, and the quiet joy that comes from witnessing principles manifest in the physical world. These reflections were as integral to his process as calculations or experiments, shaping both the intent and the execution of his work. Tesla's personal life remained shaped by solitude and contemplation. Even amidst growing recognition, he maintained the reflective habits of his youth: early morning walks along rivers, evening meditation on city rhythms, and long hours of quiet study. These moments were not escapism, but a continuation of his method, a way to integrate observation, imagination, and insight. The city itself became a laboratory of energy and human behavior, offering endless lessons in rhythm, efficiency, and balance. As Tesla's alternating current systems expanded, he began to witness subtle transformations in the urban landscape. Factories operated more efficiently, homes were illuminated consistently, and the practical limits of electrical distribution were being redefined. Yet he never allowed these practical achievements to overshadow the deeper satisfaction of discovery. Each success was a meditation realized, each improvement a quiet alignment of human ingenuity with natural law. Challenges persisted, however. Competitors adhered to older technologies, and industry skepticism remained a constant undercurrent. Tesla met these challenges not with confrontation, but with demonstration, clarity, and persistence. He relied on the inherent elegance and efficiency of his designs to make the argument, letting the visible performance of machines speak louder than words. In this way, he transformed resistance into an opportunity for deeper proof, reinforcing both technical and philosophical confidence. During this period, Tesla also began mentoring younger engineers and collaborating with colleagues who shared his vision. These relationships were measured and thoughtful, built on mutual respect and shared curiosity. He encouraged independent observation, careful reflection, and imaginative exploration, passing on the same meditative approach that had guided his own development. Knowledge for Tesla was a living process, one to be cultivated patiently, respected deeply, and shared gently. As alternating current began to take root in the practical world, Tesla's thoughts often returned to the broader universe. He reflected on the invisible forces that connected all things: energy, motion, life, and the delicate balance required to harmonize human activity with natural laws. He envisioned a future in which electricity would not only illuminate homes but empower humanity to reach further, to connect more deeply, and to interact with the world in ways aligned with both efficiency and elegance. These contemplations were quiet, almost imperceptible, yet they infused his inventions with a depth that transcended mere functionality. By the end of this phase, Tesla's alternating current systems were no longer theoretical. They were operating in cities, powering machines, and inspiring both admiration and curiosity. The quiet, disciplined methods of visualization, reflection, and patient iteration had borne fruit. He had illuminated more than streets and factories. He had illuminated the path for a new understanding of energy itself. In the stillness of his workshop, surrounded by coils, generators, and sketches, Tesla felt the continuity of his life's work. From the lightning over Smiljan to the quiet halls of Graz, from Parisian streets to the docks of New York, the rhythm of discovery had remained constant. Alternating current was not merely a technological achievement. It was a manifestation of a lifelong harmony between observation, imagination, and understanding, a pulse of innovation that would echo through time. As Nikola Tesla moved into the later stages of his career, the world around him had grown both larger and more complex. Cities hummed with electrical life, industrial networks stretched across continents, and humanity's relationship with energy was being fundamentally reshaped. Yet with progress came challenges, both external and internal, subtle currents of tension running alongside the steady pulse of discovery. Tesla had achieved remarkable recognition for his alternating current systems. His work illuminated factories, homes, and streets, and investors and engineers alike acknowledged the elegance and efficiency of his designs. Yet fame, while present, was never a goal he pursued. He remained deeply immersed in thought, often walking the quiet avenues of Manhattan late at night, observing the interplay of light and shadow, listening to the subtle hum of electricity in the air, and contemplating the patterns of energy that connected people, machines, and the natural world. Even amidst success, Tesla encountered skepticism and rivalry. Thomas Edison's direct current networks remained powerful competitors, and industrial interests were slow to embrace change. Public debates over electrical systems, often amplified by media and business concerns, created a backdrop of subtle tension. Yet Tesla met these challenges with quiet resolve, letting demonstration, precision, and clarity of principle guide him. He believed that truth, like electricity, revealed itself over time through observation, application, and thoughtful perseverance. Internally, Tesla's own standards of perfection were exacting. He was aware of every inefficiency, every potential improvement, and every nuance of electrical behavior. Even as cities adopted his systems, he returned repeatedly to designs, testing, refining, and imagining more sophisticated arrangements. Solitude was his ally, allowing him to explore ideas fully without distraction, to see the invisible patterns in currents, and to anticipate problems before they materialized. In this meditation, work and reflection were inseparable. During these years, Tesla also deepened his philosophical engagement with invention and science. He increasingly saw electricity not only as a practical resource but as a subtle expression of the universe's underlying order. Energy, he believed, was a medium connecting matter, motion, and consciousness, a principle that could illuminate both cities and human understanding. His reflections often wandered into the nature of time, perception, and the unseen forces that governed both natural phenomena and human endeavor. In quiet moments, he considered how discovery was less a matter of conquest than of alignment, of perceiving and harmonizing with the inherent rhythms of existence. Tesla's public recognition grew alongside his technical achievements. Lectures, articles, and demonstrations brought his work to wider audiences, and he became known not only as an engineer but as a visionary. Yet he remained cautious of acclaim. He valued the unfolding of understanding over applause, insight over notoriety, and quiet progress over rapid fame. In conversations with peers and mentors, he emphasized principles, observation, and imaginative exploration rather than spectacle, cultivating a subtle influence that shaped both individuals and the broader field of electrical engineering. Amid professional and philosophical endeavors, Tesla's personal life remained marked by solitude. He often walked for hours, observing city streets, rivers, and the interaction of light and shadow. These walks were reflective meditations, a means of integrating technical understanding with aesthetic and ethical considerations. He pondered the responsibilities of creators, the patterns of human behavior, and the potential for technology to serve rather than dominate. These contemplations were gentle yet profound, informing both his designs and the way he engaged with the world. Tesla also faced moments of disappointment and limitation. Some of his more ambitious visions, such as wireless transmission of energy across great distances, were met with skepticism or logistical constraints. Projects faltered due to funding challenges, misunderstandings, or the inertia of established systems. Yet he approached these obstacles with calm persistence, viewing setbacks as natural components of discovery. Each challenge became an opportunity for reflection, adjustment, and patient observation, reinforcing the meditative approach that had guided him since youth. During this period, he explored new frontiers of electrical experimentation. High-frequency currents, resonant circuits, and experimental devices became focal points of study. Tesla was fascinated by the possibilities of transmitting energy without wires, of harnessing natural resonances, and of understanding the subtle properties of oscillation. His experiments were meticulous and reflective, often conducted late at night or in solitude, accompanied only by the faint hum of equipment and the whisper of the city beyond. Tesla's relationships, though few, were meaningful. He maintained connections with colleagues who appreciated his perspective, as well as with individuals who shared his broader curiosity about science and philosophy. These relationships were measured, thoughtful, and grounded in shared inquiry rather than social convention. In these interactions, he could exchange ideas, refine concepts, and experience the quiet companionship of minds aligned in pursuit of understanding. As public and professional life intertwined, Tesla increasingly saw the ethical dimensions of invention. He believed that knowledge carried responsibility, that the application of electrical power should respect natural law, human welfare, and the broader balance of systems. He reflected on the potential for energy to improve society, connect distant communities, and harmonize human activity with the invisible currents that flowed through both matter and consciousness. This perspective guided his ongoing work, shaping not only technical design, but the philosophy of purpose behind invention. By the end of this stage, Tesla had achieved a delicate equilibrium. He had brought alternating current into practical use, influenced industrial practice, and cultivated a personal philosophy that harmonized observation, creativity, and ethical reflection. Yet he remained attentive to the unseen, the subtle, and the potential yet to be realized. He understood that the universe's rhythms extended far beyond immediate success, and that the measure of an inventor was not simply in recognition, but in the quiet integration of insight, observation, and ethical engagement. In the soft light of late evenings, surrounded by coils, sketches, and the faint vibration of current, Tesla embodied the harmony of thought and action. His achievements illuminated cities, yet his mind continued to explore the invisible, the resonances, rhythms, and potentials that would guide the next chapters of innovation. Here, in calm reflection and steady curiosity, the pulse of his life's work persisted, a quiet current bridging discovery, philosophy, and humanity. As Nikola Tesla's alternating current systems gained prominence, the world began to take notice of the man behind the quiet yet transformative innovation. Cities gleamed under electric illumination, factories hummed with newfound efficiency, and the practical implications of his work were becoming visible on an unprecedented scale. Yet for Tesla, recognition was not a goal but a subtle byproduct of understanding and creation, a reflection of principles manifested in the physical world rather than a personal pursuit. Public demonstrations became more frequent, each carefully orchestrated to show the elegance and reliability of his designs. Tesla's approach was always measured and calm. Unlike the dramatic spectacles that often accompanied technological exhibitions, his presentations were serene and deliberate, focusing on function rather than showmanship. Motors spun silently, lights glowed steadily, and the oscillating currents flowed with a precision that conveyed both efficiency and beauty. Observers were quietly awed, sensing the transformation of invisible principles into tangible, reliable power. Alongside growing recognition came subtle rivalry. Thomas Edison and other proponents of direct current viewed Tesla's alternating current systems with a mix of skepticism and concern. Industrial competition intensified, and debates over electrical standards emerged in newspapers, technical journals, and public forums. Tesla navigated these waters with patience and reflection. He rarely engaged in confrontational rhetoric, preferring to let the inherent logic, efficiency, and elegance of his systems make the argument. Demonstration, he knew, was more persuasive than dispute. These years were also marked by intensive experimentation. Tesla explored high-voltage systems, long-distance power transmission, and the possibilities of wireless energy. His laboratory became a place of quiet exploration, where the hum of machinery, the flicker of arcs, and the faint warmth of coils were companions in an ongoing meditation on energy. Each trial was an opportunity to refine understanding, anticipate challenges, and explore possibilities that extended beyond immediate practicality. In this environment, work and contemplation were inseparable. The laboratory was both a technical space and a sanctuary for the mind. Tesla's philosophical reflections deepened alongside his technical achievements. He increasingly considered the broader significance of energy, not only as a tool for human convenience, but as a medium that connected matter, motion, and life itself. In quiet moments, he pondered the invisible structures that underlie the physical world, the rhythmic patterns that govern both machines and nature, and the ethical responsibilities of those who wield knowledge. In his view, discovery was not simply an act of creation, but a dialogue with the universe, requiring attention, respect, and patience. Interactions with peers and the public were carefully balanced. Tesla maintained a select circle of colleagues who appreciated both his intellectual rigor and his contemplative temperament. Conversations were often reflective, exploring principles, patterns, and possibilities rather than immediate results or competition. Through these exchanges, Tesla cultivated both understanding and mentorship, guiding others to perceive not only the mechanics of electricity, but its deeper harmonies and implications. Despite increasing visibility, Tesla's personal rhythms remained grounded in solitude and reflection. He continued long walks through city streets, often at dawn or dusk, observing subtle patterns of light, shadow, and movement. The hum of electrical networks, the sway of trees in the wind, and the distant ripple of water along rivers were all part of an extended laboratory, a field for observation, contemplation, and mental rehearsal. Each insight, whether practical or philosophical, emerged from this careful attention to detail and the patient alignment of observation with imagination. During this period, Tesla also encountered practical obstacles and moments of disappointment. Financial limitations, technological misunderstandings, and resistance from entrenched industrial interests occasionally delayed projects. Yet he approached each challenge with equanimity, viewing setbacks as natural aspects of experimentation and discovery. Rather than frustration, he embraced reflection, adjustment, and incremental progress, understanding that long-term success depended on harmony, precision, and perseverance. Public lectures and articles provided opportunities to articulate both technical principles and broader vision. Tesla spoke not merely of currents and coils, but of the potential for electricity to transform human life, to connect distant communities, and to harmonize industry with natural law. His words carried calm authority, rooted not in ambition, but in deep understanding. Audiences responded with curiosity and respect, sensing that the work presented was the product of both technical mastery and reflective insight. This stage also illuminated the human dimension of Tesla's experience. While the world recognized his innovations, he remained attuned to subtle emotions, personal ethics, and the quiet satisfaction of discovery. Friendship, mentorship, and selective collaboration provided connection without compromising solitude, allowing him to balance professional engagement with inward reflection. This balance became essential as recognition grew, grounding his work in principles rather than external approval. By the close of this period, Tesla had achieved a remarkable synthesis. His alternating current systems were transforming cities and industries. He had cultivated public respect, and he maintained a disciplined approach to experimentation and reflection. He had learned that recognition was fleeting, yet insight, precision, and the quiet unfolding of understanding endured. In the hum of generators, the flicker of lamps, and the oscillation of currents, Tesla perceived not only the work of human hands, but the broader harmonies of the universe, patterns that connected invention, ethics, and the invisible forces shaping reality. As Nikola Tesla progressed into the later stages of his career, his imagination increasingly sought realms beyond immediate practicality. Alternating current had illuminated cities and powered machines, yet the rhythm of his curiosity drove him toward subtler and more profound challenges. He began to consider electricity not merely as a medium confined to wires, but as a pervasive force, capable of traversing space, connecting distant points, and resonating with the very fabric of the earth. These explorations marked a new chapter, one where invention and philosophy intertwined in quiet contemplation. Tesla's thoughts turned toward wireless transmission of energy, a vision that had occupied him since the earliest days of his experimentation. He imagined a world in which power could be transmitted invisibly, where currents would flow through the air or resonate through the planet itself, eliminating physical constraints and enabling a new level of human connection. Unlike the rapid demonstrations of his previous work, these ideas required patience, subtle experimentation, and profound insight into the properties of electricity, resonance, and atmospheric phenomena. His laboratory, ever a sanctuary for reflection and experimentation, became the stage for these ambitions. Coils rose toward the ceiling, capacitors hummed softly, and sparks danced in arcs that illuminated the quiet room. Each experiment was meticulous, deliberate, and observed with calm attention. Tesla would spend hours measuring frequencies, observing oscillations, and visualizing the pathways of energy that had no visible conductor. The work was meditative, blending technical precision with philosophical reflection. During this period, public recognition and scrutiny coexisted with solitude. Tesla was celebrated for his accomplishments in alternating current, yet many of his wireless experiments were met with skepticism. Investors accustomed to tangible returns often hesitated to embrace ideas that required long-term vision and subtle understanding. Yet Tesla remained undisturbed by doubt. He had long learned to trust the clarity of thought, the precision of mental visualization, and the patient unfolding of natural principles. Failure or delay did not diminish curiosity. It refined observation and strengthened insight. Tesla's philosophical reflections deepened alongside technical exploration. He considered energy as a connective tissue of the universe, a force that linked matter, motion, and even consciousness. In quiet moments, he contemplated the invisible currents that flowed through the earth, the atmosphere, and the cosmos itself. These reflections were never abstract for their own sake. They informed his experiments, guiding design choices, resonance calculations, and the very way he imagined energy could be aligned with human life. Amid experimentation, Tesla continued to observe the world with careful attention. Long walks at dawn or dusk, the soft flicker of streetlights, the hum of machinery, and the subtle pulse of wind through trees all became part of his ongoing meditation on energy. He perceived analogies between human activity, natural rhythms, and electrical oscillations. These insights reinforced his belief that invention was not an act of dominance over nature, but of careful harmonization with its laws. Relationships during this period were selective yet meaningful. Tesla maintained correspondence and collaboration with individuals who shared both his curiosity and his reflective temperament. These exchanges provided intellectual stimulation and quiet companionship, fostering discussions on ethics, philosophy, and the broader purpose of technological advancement. Tesla's mentorship was understated but profound, emphasizing observation, imagination, and alignment with universal principles rather than mere replication of technique. Financial and societal challenges persisted. Ambitious projects, particularly in wireless energy, often required resources beyond immediate availability, and practical constraints limited the full realization of his visions. Yet Tesla approached these limitations as part of the natural rhythm of discovery. Each setback was absorbed with patience, each obstacle considered an opportunity for further reflection. In this way, adversity became a teacher, reinforcing his meditative approach and his understanding of innovation as a long-term dialogue with nature. Tesla's public lectures and writings during this period reflected his dual focus on technology and philosophy. He spoke of energy not only in terms of volts and currents, but as a principle capable of connecting distant communities, harmonizing systems, and advancing human understanding. His words carried calm authority, informed by decades of observation, reflection, and careful experimentation. Audiences, though occasionally skeptical, were invited to perceive electricity as more than a utility, as a force woven into the rhythms of life and the structure of the universe itself. By the twilight of his professional activity, Tesla had cultivated a profound balance. His inventions continued to impact cities and industries, yet his inner life remained anchored in observation, reflection, and curiosity. He had explored the tangible manifestations of alternating current, the invisible potentials of wireless energy, and the subtle harmonies connecting human endeavor with natural law. In every coil, every spark, and every oscillation, he perceived the continuity of principles, the quiet beauty of aligned forces, and the enduring pulse of curiosity that had guided him since youth. Even as age advanced, Tesla's vision retained its clarity. He walked the streets with measured steps, observing light, motion, and subtle vibrations. He reflected on the ethical dimensions of invention, the responsibilities of knowledge, and the potential for technology to serve humanity with grace and harmony. Each insight, whether technical or philosophical, emerged from the same meditative practice that had sustained him throughout his life: patient observation, careful reflection, and the alignment of imagination with the rhythms of the natural world. In this stage, Tesla became both inventor and philosopher, exploring not only how energy could be harnessed, but how understanding itself could be deepened through attentive observation. His experiments were silent symphonies, resonances not only of electrical current but of thought, ethics, and vision. Each spark was a whisper of possibility, each oscillation a gentle note in the unfolding story of human ingenuity, aligned with universal law. By the end of this phase, Tesla had achieved a subtle triumph. He had illuminated cities, inspired colleagues, and expanded human comprehension of energy, yet he remained grounded in the quiet joy of discovery. In his solitude, amidst coils, sketches, and the hum of unseen currents, he embodied the harmony between thought, observation, and creation. The pulse of his work continued, a rhythm of innovation, reflection, and philosophical insight that would echo long beyond his immediate accomplishments. In the quiet of his later years, Nikola Tesla moved through life with a rhythm defined by reflection, observation, and the gentle cadence of memory. New York City, ever dynamic and bustling, seemed to slow around him as he walked its streets in the early mornings or at twilight, taking in the interplay of light, shadow, and subtle motion. The hum of distant traffic, the faint vibration of elevated trains, and the occasional murmur of water along the rivers formed a background symphony, one that echoed in a softer register the currents he had devoted his life to understanding. Tesla's living quarters had become a haven of simplicity. Coils, sketches, and notes were arranged with careful attention, each piece a reminder of experiments past and ideas still alive in his mind. Though the world outside moved rapidly, his daily rituals adhered to an inner rhythm: observation, contemplation, and reflection. He read, sketched, and occasionally corresponded with colleagues, always with a measured pace, savoring the quiet integration of thought and memory. Each day unfolded gently, with the pulse of curiosity guiding his hours rather than urgency or expectation. The achievements of his life were manifold. Alternating current illuminated cities, motors spun with unprecedented efficiency, and the foundational principles of electrical engineering had been transformed by his insight. Yet Tesla's satisfaction was quiet, subtle, and contemplative. He rarely measured success in recognition or wealth, but in the refinement of understanding, the elegance of design, and the continuity of inquiry. Each system he had created was, in his mind, not only functional, but an expression of universal principles, a harmony of observation, imagination, and alignment with the rhythms of nature. In solitude, Tesla revisited the memories of formative years, the rolling hills of Smiljan, the lightning-filled skies of his childhood, the quiet encouragement of his mother, and the disciplined studies at Graz. These recollections were not merely nostalgic. They were integral to his reflective practice. He saw the threads of influence, curiosity, and observation that had guided his entire life. tracing the lineage of insight from earliest wonder to late contemplation. Each memory was a quiet affirmation that discovery is a lifelong meditation, unfolding gently in its own time. Tesla's health, though frail in these years, did not diminish his engagement with ideas. He experimented with thought, continued to sketch concepts for wireless energy and high-frequency devices, and observed the subtleties of natural and urban rhythms. Each reflection was accompanied by a philosophical lens, the consideration of ethical responsibility, the balance between human activity and natural law, and the pursuit of understanding as an end in itself. He perceived energy as a connective medium, linking not only machines but people, cities, and the wider cosmos. Interactions with others remained selective. Tesla valued conversations that were quiet, thoughtful, and intellectually engaging. He mentored where opportunity allowed, offering guidance to those who shared a reflective temperament and a dedication to understanding rather than spectacle. Friendships were characterized by depth, patience, and shared curiosity, providing both companionship and gentle dialogue on matters of science, philosophy, and human nature. Even as recognition of his earlier work persisted in the public sphere, Tesla maintained his inward focus. He observed the evolution of technology, the expansion of electrical networks, and the spread of ideas with a calm attentiveness. Rather than seeking credit or validation, he measured progress by the elegance, efficiency, and harmony of systems, by the alignment of invention with principle. His reflections often turned to the potential of knowledge to serve humanity, to harmonize human activity with natural currents, and to cultivate understanding across generations. Daily life was punctuated by gentle routines that nourished both mind and spirit. Tesla walked in the early dawn, feeling the rhythm of his own steps echoing the pulse of the city. He observed clouds drifting across the sky, sunlight reflecting off river surfaces, and the subtle play of wind through trees. These observations, though simple, were profound in their consistency, a reminder that patterns exist in both nature and human endeavor, and that careful attention reveals the invisible currents that guide life and energy alike. In moments of deep contemplation, Tesla often considered the philosophical implications of his work. He reflected on the interconnectedness of matter, motion, and energy, and on the quiet responsibility of those who shape understanding. He thought about the future, cities illuminated with clean, efficient energy, machines harmonized with natural laws, and knowledge passed carefully and thoughtfully to those who would continue the pursuit of insight. These reflections were gentle, without urgency, yet infused with the enduring pulse of curiosity and care. By the close of this stage, Tesla had entered a state of serene equilibrium. His life's work, from early experiments to the global adoption of alternating current, from the visualization of wireless energy to philosophical meditation, had reached a point of reflective completion. The external world had been touched by his inventions, while internally he remained aligned with the rhythms of observation, thought, and quiet insight. Each day was a meditation, a continuation of the practice that had guided him from youth to twilight, revealing the harmonies between intellect, energy, and existence. In these final years, Tesla embodied the essence of a life devoted to both discovery and reflection. The quiet spaces of his rooms, the gentle flow of electrical hum, and the subtle patterns of the world outside became a landscape for contemplation, study, and philosophical exploration. Every spark, every oscillation, and every remembered insight was a note in the symphony of a life lived with dedication, patience, and profound awareness. As the years gently unfolded, Nikola Tesla's thoughts increasingly turned toward the enduring influence of his life's work. The hum of the city outside, the streetlights flickering softly, the occasional murmur of passing trains, the distant ripple of the East River, served as a backdrop to reflections that bridged past, present, and future. Tesla often contemplated not only the machines he had created, but the ideas and principles that gave rise to them. Currents invisible to the eye, resonances that connected objects across distance, and the subtle patterns of energy that underlie all motion. Tesla's reflections on legacy were not marked by ambition or desire for recognition, but by a profound sense of responsibility. He understood that the inventions he had brought into the world, alternating current, motors, generators, and early experiments with wireless energy, were not merely tools, but expressions of universal principles. Each system, each oscillation, each carefully calibrated coil represented a dialogue between human intention and natural law, a harmonious alignment that could guide, enlighten, and empower future generations. In quiet hours, Tesla revisited his earliest inspirations. He thought of the lightning that had danced across the skies of Smiljan, the encouragement of his mother, and the disciplined training under his father and teachers. These formative experiences were, in his mind, inseparable from his later discoveries. He often mused on the invisible threads connecting all life and learning, how curiosity, observation, and reflection nurtured understanding, how patience and solitude deepened insight, and how ethical consideration ensured that knowledge could serve rather than dominate. Even as his body aged, Tesla's mind remained active and precise. He sketched new concepts for energy transmission, considered the possibilities of resonance and oscillation, and explored theoretical ideas that bridged electricity, physics, and human perception. Yet these explorations were never frantic. They were meditative extensions of a lifelong rhythm. Work, observation, and reflection flowed seamlessly into one another, guided by a serene curiosity that had defined his entire existence. Tesla also considered the human dimension of his legacy. He reflected on friendships formed, colleagues mentored, and the subtle ways in which ideas could inspire others. Knowledge, he believed, was a living current, to be shared carefully, nurtured patiently, and refined with respect. In correspondence and conversation, he encouraged others not simply to replicate, but to observe, imagine, and align with the underlying principles of nature. This approach, he hoped, would ensure that the power of invention remained a conduit for insight, ethics, and long-term benefit. Public recognition continued in measured ways. Articles occasionally celebrated his contributions, awards acknowledged technical achievements, and journalists wrote of his visionary concepts. Tesla received these honors without attachment, seeing them as reflections of work realized rather than goals pursued. The true measure of influence, he believed, lay in the enduring principles embodied in his creations and the ripple effects of thoughtful innovation across time and space. Evenings were often the most contemplative moments of the day. Tesla would sit by windows overlooking the city, observing the subtle interplay of light and shadow, the flicker of lamps against the gathering night, and the distant movements of people and water. These observations were both aesthetic and analytical. He saw patterns in the urban landscape, resonances in motion, and analogies between human activity and the invisible currents he had spent a lifetime studying. In these reflections, he traced the interconnectedness of invention, observation, and life itself. Tesla's philosophical considerations extended to the notion of time and continuity. He imagined the influence of ideas stretching far beyond immediate application, currents of thought moving across decades, inspiring new discoveries, and subtly shaping the understanding of those who would come after. The life of an idea, in his contemplation, was analogous to energy. It persisted, it transformed, it connected, and it illuminated. His inventions were the first tangible expressions of these currents, yet he saw them as part of a larger, ongoing symphony of insight and exploration. Solitude, which had been a companion throughout his life, remained essential. In quiet moments, Tesla reflected not only on what had been achieved, but on the ethical and philosophical implications of invention. He considered how energy could serve humanity, how observation could deepen wisdom, and how curiosity could be cultivated without haste or disruption. Each reflection was gentle, layered, and deliberate, a meditation on both technical mastery and the broader purpose of knowledge. By this stage, Tesla had embraced the full arc of his life's journey. From the rolling hills of Croatia to the laboratories and streets of New York, from the earliest sparks of curiosity to the tangible impact of alternating current, his path was a continuum of observation, imagination, and ethical reflection. He understood that his legacy would not be measured merely in machines or recognition, but in the enduring influence of principles, in the cultivation of curiosity, and in the quiet resonance of understanding that continued long after the circuits fell silent. In these reflective years, Tesla found peace not in applause but in continuity, the gentle awareness that every experiment, every observation, and every insight was a link in an unbroken chain connecting past, present, and future. Energy in all its forms, visible, invisible, and conceptual, was a bridge across time, and he was both observer and participant in its unfolding. In this harmony, he experienced a profound calm. The knowledge that the work of a lifetime had contributed to the currents of discovery, and that those currents would flow onward, unseen but influential, guiding minds yet to come. In the final years of Nikola Tesla's life, the world outside continued to hum with the energy he had helped to illuminate. Streetlights glimmered along avenues, factories operated with the efficiency of alternating current, and the invisible threads of electricity carried life through homes, industries, and cities. Yet Tesla himself moved in a quieter rhythm, one defined by reflection, gentle observation, and a meditative engagement with both memory and the unseen currents that had guided his work. He spent hours in solitude, seated at windows that framed the soft light of dawn or the gentle glow of twilight. From these vantage points, Tesla observed the world with a serene attentiveness, the flicker of gas lamps mingling with electric light, the glint of sunlight on water, and the subtle movements of pedestrians and vehicles below. Each observation was both aesthetic and analytical, a reminder of the interconnectedness of natural rhythms and human activity. To him, the patterns of the city mirrored the patterns of energy itself, oscillations, flows, and harmonies quietly sustaining the life of the world. Even as his physical strength waned, Tesla's mind remained vibrant. He continued to sketch ideas, calculate possibilities, and explore concepts that spanned energy, resonance, and human potential. Wireless transmission, high-frequency oscillations, and subtle experiments with lighting and motion remained objects of fascination. But these pursuits were no longer urgent. They were extensions of a lifelong meditation, exercises in observation, creativity, and alignment with natural laws. Tesla's reflections often returned to the philosophical dimensions of his work. He considered electricity not merely as a utility, but as a medium connecting people, objects, and ideas. He pondered the ethical responsibility of those who wield knowledge, the duty to harmonize human activity with nature, and the profound beauty in observing and aligning with the invisible forces that govern both matter and life. These contemplations were gentle, never hurried, and suffused with a sense of continuity that transcended any single experiment or achievement. Relationships remained few but meaningful. He corresponded with fellow scientists, exchanged ideas with young inventors, and nurtured connections with those who shared his reflective temperament. In these exchanges, he emphasized curiosity, careful observation, and the alignment of insight with ethical responsibility. Knowledge, he believed, was a living current, one that must be guided thoughtfully to illuminate not only machines, but the human spirit. Tesla also found peace in memories. The hills of Smiljan, the storms of his childhood, the encouragement of his family, and the quiet hours of study and experimentation all resurfaced as gentle guides, shaping both reflection and understanding. He revisited in thought the pivotal moments of his life, the conception of alternating current, the first demonstrations of motors and generators, the challenges of public skepticism, and the quiet triumphs of insight realized. Each memory was a note in a broader symphony, a testament to a life attuned to curiosity, reflection, and the subtle currents of discovery. Though the world increasingly recognized Tesla's contributions, he remained detached from fame. Awards and accolades arrived, yet he regarded them as secondary to the harmony and clarity of thought that had guided his work. For him, the truest measure of achievement lay not in recognition, but in the enduring alignment of ideas, ethics, and observation, in the quiet realization that invention could illuminate, connect, and inspire long beyond his own presence. In his final reflections, Tesla often contemplated the future. He imagined cities and communities sustained by energy aligned with natural rhythms, people inspired by curiosity and careful observation, and knowledge transmitted with both precision and ethical mindfulness. The invisible currents of electricity were, for him, metaphors for the persistence of insight, the continuity of discovery, and the gentle unfolding of understanding across generations. In these twilight years, Tesla embodied a harmony between invention, contemplation, and philosophical reflection. His life had been a steady current of curiosity, imagination, and ethical responsibility. The work he had done, the systems designed, the experiments conducted, and the principles illuminated, would continue quietly to influence the world. His legacy was not only technical but conceptual, a model of disciplined curiosity, careful observation, and patient alignment with the invisible forces that shape both nature and human life. As his final days approached, Tesla's thoughts remained suffused with calm insight. He perceived life as a series of resonances, moments, memories, and ideas vibrating across time, touching unseen points and creating patterns of influence that would extend into the future. The pulse of energy, in all its forms, was a bridge between past and present, invention and reflection, matter and thought. In this awareness, he experienced a profound serenity, the gentle satisfaction of a life lived in harmony with both understanding and purpose. Nikola Tesla passed quietly, leaving behind a world subtly illuminated by his innovations, enriched by his insight, and inspired by his philosophy. The alternating currents that powered cities, the ideas of wireless energy, and the meditative, ethical approach to discovery he embodied continued to resonate long after, influencing engineers, thinkers, and dreamers alike. In the hum of electricity, the flicker of lights, and the invisible threads connecting people and ideas, Tesla's life endured, a timeless current, gentle yet persistent, guiding curiosity and understanding across generations. If you enjoyed this quiet journey through Nikola Tesla's life, you may find peace in exploring other stories of those who shaped our understanding of the universe.